Hello there. D Tacos here, the host of the Daily Taco news and information program, brought to you not daily. Sorry, get over it. We have a really special one today. I interview Marc Polymeropoulos. He is a former senior CIA officer, 26-year career. He's been all over the place, Iraq, Afghanistan. He's seen, he's been there and done that. You understand? Been there and done that. So, awesome dude. Great talk with him. We talk about everything. His career, what led him to retire, which is an insane fucking story. It's been in GQ and in New York Times and CNN. Like, it's a crazy story of what went down. And Marc's been fighting to try and get traumatic brain injury resources and healthcare, like for the agency to actually help out their officers and stuff like that. Because unbelievable fucking story. I'll link it in the description and in the show notes. The GQ article, really well done. He's a Greek. I'm a Greek. That's cool, I guess. He's a good egg. We had a great talk. We talk about everything. Osama bin Laden raid. We talk about Afghanistan. We talk about Kurdistan. If you're a geopolitical person, get your mind right, get the wet wipes, and make sure you clean up after yourself when you're done, because it's a good one. We also talk about the state of the country, where we're at, why we're so polarized, and what we could do about it. Awesome time. Awesome guy. Check him out, Marc Polymeropoulos. He's got a book coming out in June on leadership called Clarity in Crisis. Check it out. Google him. He's a good egg, and I appreciate the time he gave me. Do me a favor. You know what's coming right now, baby. If you are watching on YouTube, give it a like. Subscribe to our channel. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any of the other audio platforms, rate and review it over there. Give it 5 stars. Say how handsome I am and how my hair is definitely not receding, which it is. And the best possible thing you can do is share it. Share the show. Share it with everybody. We also do the Fat Guy Sports Time. You love fat guys, you love sports. Check it out. If you're a Ranger fan and NHL fan specific, we do Artemi's Bread Basket, named after our king, Artemi Panarin, who's the left wing in the New York Rangers, an all-around excellent guy, great hair. And that's it. I appreciate it. This is the Daily Taco. Thanks. Enjoy. Marc Polymeropoulos, Crisis, Clarity in Crisis, coming out in June. Good egg. Thanks, guys. What I usually do is I do like a minute and a half intro, and then I just kick off right into like our conversation. Right?
Okay, sure.
Not to do some like setup like, oh, welcome back. It's the blah, blah, blah show with Marc Polymeropoulos, all that garbage. So how's it going? How's everything going?
I'm doing okay. So, I have a couple little, health issues here and there. So I still got these headaches, but aside from that, okay. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, dude. You know what it was? Relatively mild case, thankfully, and my mom and my dad got it too. So like, thankfully, they were mild too.
Right.
My sister got the vaccine, so she dodged it, but everyone was pretty much okay. It was relatively mild. I was just like, the last week after like all the regular symptoms went away was like this fog. Like I was just like all kind of fucked up, like just really like fatigued and stuff like that. I didn't want to like, half-ass like a talk with you and stuff.
No. Again, well, I'm glad you're okay. Scary stuff. We've had, there's a whole bunch of neighbors we have. We've had friends whose parents have died, older parents have died. Like, it's pretty serious. I'm certainly not one to discount it. I've had my first shot, and I get the second vaccine. The second shot should be the end of next week. So I'm looking forward to.
Nice. Yeah, my sister actually didn't catch it. And she had only got the first shot, which covers you like 65%, and she still didn't catch it.
Good.
Yeah, so I mean, we definitely dodged the bullet for sure. It was relatively mild, which is, all you could ask for.
That's right.
So let's get into it. The vaccine's not a CIA plot to track everyone, right?
No, it's not. Jeez.
I'm just kidding.
Maybe some would think it is. Who knows? God, what a crazy country we're in now.
I know. Like the first thing I wanted to like the thing that popped up was like the whole Putin thing going on like recently. Like just it takes one to know one with Biden about the killer comment and stuff like that. What I don't get is how Fox News specifically just parrots like Russian propaganda, like where like he said Putin said he wants to debate Biden and all this. Like like they're not what's that show? What's that channel called? Russia Today or whatever, RT.com. Like they're not sponsored.
Right. No, so I think look, so one of the most distressing things of our time in America today in our politics is that the elements of the Republican Party, and we know who the select members are, the senators and congressmen and some former administration officials, were so willing to promulgate known Russian disinformation. So they were these are people who know better, who should have known better, who were briefed that this was Russian disinformation, yet continue to push this forward. And that includes, some elements of Fox News, and for those of us in the national security sphere, that's really distressing, because all you're doing is giving this incredible dissemination platform to Russian intelligence, and you'd think that our political system would be mature enough to to not go down that road, but folks on the right certainly did.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of scary too, because growing up, I'm 35 now, so like I was around, like, I was cognizant of what went down with, the Iraq war, the lead up to that. And like Fox News was always the more right side, and when you think of right and Republican, you think more of like defense and intelligence, like they're on that side more. And just like the turn it's made in the last like 4 or 5 years is kind of crazy, where it doesn't matter. Like only thing that matters is the narrative that we want to feed our base, or like it's scary, to be real.
It is. It's very scary. So here's kind of where I come down. Look, I spent my I served for the CIA for 26 years, a lot of time overseas, and defending, certainly protecting and defending America, but also believing in kind of that concept of American exceptionalism, that we were the bright shining city on the hill, and that others should emulate us, should follow us. We could teach the world a lot, especially the third world. I've lost that feeling. Over the last 4 years, our political dynamic is so bad now, and you saw the events of January 6th, that I don't feel that American exceptionalism anymore, and that to me is really sad. I still love this country, and I still think it's a great place to live, but boy, this country to me has changed a lot. And when you have 47% of Republican voters say they're not going to take the vaccine in recent polling, I mean, I think we've kind of collectively lost our minds. Or when you have people who refuse to wear a mask, I mean, it's a freaking mask,
right?
And so I just don't get it. I think we've lost this sense of the collective good. Everything's so polarized now, so it's really sad for me.
What's interesting is I got cousins that they're from here, but they moved to Greece, and they have like a center rightish government right now. Right. And they say like it doesn't matter what spectrum you're on. Like, COVID is like everyone needs to wear a mask, follow the guidelines. Like everyone's on board. It's not politicized like how it's been politicized here. Right. And that's the interesting thing, like where even in Greece, which, right, Greece is a developed country, but, not really. Like they're fine, they're developed, but even them, they're like, okay, let's, we have a health crisis, let's deal with that first, and then we can go back to our infighting and that the political stuff. I wanted to ask you, because you retired in 2019, right?
That's right, in July of 2019.
So you worked for the Trump administration as a CIA officer.
Yeah. Was
morale down compared to administrations past, or like you guys just have a job and you do it?
I think I've thought about this a lot, and I've written about it, and I've talked about it. I think fundamentally people at the CIA just kind of put their nose to the ground and do their work. You try not to pay attention to politics. You certainly at whether you're at Langley or you're deployed overseas, you don't have access, thank God, to Twitter during the day, so you don't see any of the nutty stuff that Trump was tweeting. So in general, people were certainly just going about their business, but it's impossible to say that the attacks on the intelligence community, didn't have an effect. Sure. Because we work in this, in the shadows, and there is no fanfare. You don't get parades, you don't get public recognition. But when the president is kind of constantly demeaning you in your profession, that's going to take a toll. I thought that the national security structures could survive one Trump term, and look, I've been very open, so it's no secret if you see my Twitter account or read what I've written, that I was not a fan of President Trump or the administration, and I certainly I'm glad that President Biden was elected. But I thought if Trump had won a second term, you would have had a really deleterious effect. Then I think you would have seen some more serious morale issues. So I think kind of we survived it, frankly.
Right.
With a lot of just putting your nose to the ground, working through stuff. But boy, a second term would have been tough. And this is just my opinion. I mean, look, the CIA is generally a conservative organization, so this is not even Republican versus Democrat.
Yeah.
This has nothing to ideology. Just Trump was such a disruptor, and there were so many attacks on the intelligence community and the profession. It was hard to stomach for 4 years. I think it would have been pretty damaging if it had been 8.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I remember when he was elected. It was just like the next day, everyone was like, "Holy fuck, are you serious?" Because listen, I'm from New York, so I know of Trump since I'm a kid. So people from New York who haven't drank the Kool-Aid on Trump, because there's definitely a lot of people that have done that, know that Trump's just smoke and mirrors. Like, he's full of shit. He just played a successful business guy on TV. That's what he did. He didn't really do it.
Well, look, I'm from New Jersey. I grew up in Highland Park, New Jersey. It's the college town of Rutgers, where my dad was a professor for 40 years. So, I'm 35 minutes from the city. I grew up a wild New York Rangers fan. When I was, you think about raising kids. I think when I was 10 and 11 years old, my friends and I were jumping on the train and coming into the garden. And so, either we were going down to, Canal Street, go to Canal Jeans, or we were, trying to go see, punk rock bands down in the village, or we were going to see hockey games or Knicks game, Rangers Knicks games. But we knew Trump very well, and he was just, he was this caricature, and it's not that he was disliked. He was just this guy on page 6 of the New York Post. The fact that he became president is astonishing for New York, for the metro area.
It's crazy, dude.
My wife and I lived on the Upper East Side for a couple of years, right after we got married, up on 80th in New York. So we're 3-year New Yorkers. My daughter was born at Mount Sinai, so I love New York City. And I consider that area my second home. I've lived in Virginia for a long time, but I'll tell you, Donald Trump was some guy who was funny on Howard Stern. The fact that he became president is shocking. And any New Yorker will tell you that, or New Jerseyan, or you can even from Connecticut. I mean, come on.
Like any tri-state person who exactly. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, he's the guy with the funny hair who was in Home Alone, and he's on Howard Stern all the time.
Right, and he's always running around talking about these beautiful women he was dating. And he would say outrageous stuff, and his hotels were kind of gaudy but kind of nice,
right?
He built the rink in Central Park. I mean, he bailed out the Central Park ice rink. I mean, just stuff like that.
Yeah.
And because that's New York, and and look, I think the country would have been better if he stayed a real estate developer,
right?
But somehow he was elected president. Pretty astonishing.
Wild stuff. I mean, listen, I'm gonna be completely honest with where I'm at politically. I am not a right-wing guy. I do have a certain appreciation for the military and intelligence community. I mean, do they kind of overstep sometimes? Sure, right, whatever. But that's when you have a functioning government, they're there to check that, right? They're there to make sure they're on the up and up. But I'm definitely more of a lefty. I'm not. I want people to have actually affordable or free healthcare, primary healthcare. If that makes me agitprop socialist, that's what I am.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
But still, I'm still, I really considered joining the military when 9/11 happened and stuff. I was 15. I was in New York, and I saw it happen.
Right.
Basically, everyone was super angry, and everybody wanted to go into Iraq, and everyone had that sense of patriotism and national unity that we've lost over the last 20 years since it happened. So specifically you were in New York, right, when 9/11 happened?
Yeah, I was.
Which is interesting. I didn't think CIA operated in America.
Well, I could just say that I was there. But ultimately, yes. So I remember walking through the rubble, about 4, 5, 6 days or so afterwards, after 9/11. And really, but here's why I love New York City and I love New Yorkers. We lived up on the Upper East Side, and there was a pizza joint, I think on 2nd Avenue, owned by an Egyptian. And I remember worrying that he might face some kind of anti-Muslim backlash, but the opposite occurred.
Yeah.
And there was an outpouring of support to this guy, and he hung American flag on his shop. But everyone, and I remember President Bush flat out coming out and saying, "We cannot take this out on our fellow, Muslim Americans. Contrast that with all of the, what I would say, the racist rhetoric that President Trump, espoused, whether it's calling it the China virus or anything, right, or his denigrating, Hispanic Americans, Hispanic, or Mexicans or whatever. But being in New York City at that time there was a time of terrible tragedy, but it was also a time of complete and total unity. And I will never forget that. I'll never forget seeing the funerals and the outpouring of emotion for firefighters and police officers, first responders. And boy, so that to me, and I think we've lost that. I agree. And you would have hoped that COVID would have brought the country together, but somehow we're so polarized because of this president. I think that it didn't, and that's extraordinary to me.
And the interesting thing, like COVID, definitely we had that opportunity to like unite a little bit. And if Trump was just, I'm not even saying like go above and beyond his like skills, because he's got none. Like if he just acted like a human being, listened to the doctors and the scientists and stuff, and like made that message to the country, he would have won again by a landslide, even if we had more people dead from COVID. Like even if he just showed a little bit of
leadership,
that's it, a little bit,
right?
That right. Like anybody would show, really. Like if you're genuinely concerned about like your constituency, which his is, 330 million people supposedly as the president, you need to show some kind of like fucking leadership. You need to be like what do they call a lighthouse, like in the dark, like show something, show some pulse.
Well, again, for those of us who remember Trump, so I mean, he's not a good person. So when people ask me, why do you dislike Trump so much? I'm not even talking about ideology. I'm not talking about policies. I'm talking about when I every morning when I get up and I teach my two kids, my son and daughter, how to be better people. Trump, it does everything opposite the 10 commandments. He has no empathy. I mean, he makes fun of crippled people. I mean, he's just a terrible person. And I'll tell you, I was, talking recently with an active duty Marine who felt, because I asked him, we were talking about politics. He's like, well, I can talk a little more freely now that Trump is gone. And I said, well, what do you think of him? He goes like, he was a jerk. He's just, and because the fact of the matter, he was, and that lack of empathy and that lack of compassion, which I think, Joe Biden does have, and you can agree with Biden's policies or not, but boy, all you have to do is just, just be a good person. And he was not. And so I think the country really suffered from that. And, you can say whatever you want about George W. Bush and the decision to invade Iraq, which ultimately turned out to be quite disastrous for the United States. That said, George W. Bush was a really decent man, and everybody around him knew that. Same thing with Barack Obama. So you might not like President Obama's policies, but he's for everyone who knows him, said he's a great person who, go have a beer with him, play basketball all the time with his staff. Just a really decent, really smart man. Trump was not that. And somehow, America elected someone who's just a total jerk. And that's, I tell you, as someone who represented the United States overseas, it's embarrassing.
Right.
Because he's just not a good person. And that's not a reflection of who we want to be as a nation. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even talking about his policies and look, this, like Trump was a Democrat for his whole life until he decided to run for president. So who the hell knows? I mean, what he believes in.
Yeah, I think before like anything like he believes in, it's all about him. It's all about
narcissism.
Yeah, like that's it. It doesn't even go to the point where it's like, okay, what's right for our country, what's right for my specific party, what's right for my donors, or any of that. It's all about what's good for him. And I feel like that's where it ends too. Like I don't think it much goes past that. I think it's what do they call it? A mile wide and he's an inch deep. You dig in a little bit.
Right. And I think it's embarrassing. It was embarrassing for the United States. I have a lot of friends who are in the diplomatic service, Department of State, of course, the intelligence service as well, the U.S. military, who spent a lot of time overseas. And it was quite difficult kind of trying to defend this man. Now, all of his policies are not bad. So you take a look, for example, at NATO. Should we get our NATO partners to pay more? Does Germany pay enough, for example? The answer is no. So we should press them. Sure. It's just his methods, though, and the acts of insulting foreign countries and partners, and insulting Angela Merkel. I mean, so it was a never-ending kind of battle for those of us to try to ensure that we have not, humiliated all of our allies. That said, some of Trump's policy, I mean, not everything he did was wrong. I look at the Middle East, and while I'm not a great fan of Jared Kushner, because I think he was just a neophyte and a fake, the Abraham Accords, the idea of Israel and the UAE signing a peace agreement, you can't argue that. That's good. That's a good thing. While I have to kind of swallow my pride a bit sometimes, not everything he did was terrible, but I just go back to it, and I tell all my friends and colleagues, and I'm on Twitter, and people always say, why do you bash Trump so much? Because he's just a jerk. And I just think that it's a terrible reflection on the United States. And I'll take that to my grave, that we elected someone who's just a lousy human.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. And even the Kushner stuff, I mean, they were kind of like talking anyway, Israel and you. I mean, I'm not trying to denigrate what happened with the Abraham Accords and stuff. I mean, it's good. But I mean, they were already like.
Yes, they have a relationship for sure. Yep.
Right. It wasn't like, he brought,
right.
Saudi or Iran and fucking Israel together and like, oh, everyone's holding hands and loving each other.
Right. But it's okay. I mean, we have to, those of us who were kind of the never Trumpers still can give him some credit here and there. I mean, it would be, that would be silly not to. So look, I'm just, this goes to the whole question of the vaccine now. So look, President Biden was elected to do two things, which he's done already. Frankly, I don't care if he doesn't give a press conference. I don't, the guy has a stutter. So, and he's older. So sometimes his public speech is going to be a little tough, and Fox is going to, kind of make fun of him about it. I could care less for two reasons. He delivered us shots and checks. Shots meaning the vaccine, and that's what all anybody wants, and checks meaning the American Rescue Plan, which was the stimulus. And as far as I'm concerned, it's been a dramatic success. So, today they're running this nonstop footage of him tripping, walking up the stairs of Air Force One, which, it doesn't look very good, but you know what? We're ahead of the pace in the vaccine program. And people are getting their stimulus checks, and I credit the administration tremendously for this.
Also, like the trip, like him tripping, I saw the video.
Yeah,
he tripped. He didn't. It's not like he didn't get up. If he didn't get up, like, okay, fuck, we got an issue. He got back up and like kept. I mean, Gerald Ford busted his ass. Trump, had to hold on to that arm.
Right. And to be fair though, that the media went after. So there, there's going to be all sorts of focus on this. But again, I go back to, got it, okay, but you know what? The vaccines are going to allow for a return to normalcy, and the American economy is going to recover now. And so that's, he was elected based. I think I agree with you what you said before. If COVID had not occurred, I think Trump would have been reelected.
Me too.
And so, but look, so Biden is delivering. What happens in the future, I don't know, but I can tell you that. My 82-year-old dad and stepmother in New Jersey both are vaccinated. My wife is fully vaccinated. I have, in a week I'll get my second vaccine. My kids should probably get vaccinated within a month. I mean, Virginia's doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, God bless. That's what Biden promised, and he's delivering, and that's what I care about, because I haven't freaking seen anybody for a year. Like, I haven't done anything, and I'm not comfortable eating inside in a restaurant. Maybe if it's completely empty, I'll do that. But the idea of going to bars or restaurants, I'm not ready to do that. But once you get the vaccine and you get the more, I guess, the move towards herd immunity, we're gonna be back to normal. I want to go to a baseball game. I'm a baseball fanatic. I'm dying to go to a baseball game.
What team do you like? Nationals.
So I've lived down here for a long time. So it's I've turned into a pretty big Nats fan. But this is going to disappoint you. So I'm a wild New York fan and everything else except when it comes to baseball. So when I grew up in New Jersey, my parents would go to Martha's Vineyard in the summer. So where this is going. I became a Red Sox fan. So I was a Red Sox fan growing up. Crazy. Although I've been to Yankee Stadium and former Shea Stadium a zillion times. I used to, when I lived in the Upper East Side, jump on the 6 train. I could make it up to Yankee Stadium in 20 minutes.
You're right there.
Yeah. So I love baseball. I cannot wait to get back to games.
Yeah, just a little bit of normalcy, just like way things used to be. To like a little bit of it. Give us
right. I saw the Rangers. MSG. I think the Rangers are letting in 3,000.
Yeah, it's like I think it's 10%, so it's almost 2,000. I think they might be increasing it as the weeks go on.
I saw them beat the Flyers 9-0 the other day, which is great because there's no fans and teams I hate more than from Philadelphia.
Same here, dude.
The most
I don't like the
rotten
Boston
humans
Red
on
Sox.
the planet. You know, like, no, the Philly fans are unbelievable. I remember going to a Rangers Flyers playoff game at the old Spectrum, and when I was a kid,
You're
like,
crazy.
again, my buddies, I thought our lives were in danger.
Yeah, my buddies went to. They went to a Philadelphia Eagles Giants playoff game, maybe, or some late in the season game, divisional game, all the way up top. So you're sitting with the troglodytes. You're sitting with the maniacs, like.
Yeah.
So they were like, literally, we were worried that we were going to get pushed and thrown out of the stadium on the other. Like, they're crazy over there.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was wild. I've seen videos of like Flyer fan like laying out a Ranger fan at like Patch cheesesteaks or whatever, the cheesesteak place. Like, it's just mayhem in Philly.
Crazy. So I love going to the Garden though, growing up. So my dad stopped going because, you know, we sat up in the blue seats when you can get tickets for $12 at the Garden, and everyone's smoking pot up there, and there's fights all over the place. It was the Garden before it was kind of redone. It was a loony bin, so it was awesome. And I'm what I say to all my friends and family, they've accepted this. You know, I have a wonderful wife I've been married to for 2.5 decades and 2 great kids in college. But I tell them the most important moment of my life, which I'll take to my grave, was when the Rangers won the Cup in '94, and you know, with Marc Messier. And so that is the single greatest moment of my life.
I remember that year. Yeah, specifically, I remember that year. I was young. I was 9. So, but. Right. I remember because the Knicks were really good too. It was like that summer of '94 where like they were both like trying to get it and stuff. So I remember it pretty distinctly.
That's right. Oh, I love that. That was that team of Messier. And, you know, I just, you know, one of the things I wrote a book on leadership that's going to come out in June about my time in, you know, leadership lessons from the CIA. It's called Clarity in Crisis. HarperCollins is going to publish it. So I'm really excited in early June. But so I love talking about leadership. And when I think about great leaders in sports, Marc Messier, you know, when he made that famous guarantee against against the Devils in the series before, you know, the Rangers were down 3-2, and he said, "We will win." And he goes out, scores a hat trick. So I think Messier is one of the great leaders in sports history, and so I love, you know, that kind of stuff. That's, you know, as I've retired from the agency, that's what I focus on now, is on learning about and speaking about and teaching leadership.
So, like, initially when you joined the CIA, it was a 26-year career. So you joined before 9/11, like
I did 1990, January 3rd, 1993 was when I walked in the doors.
What made you want to go into the CIA?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think a couple things. So, you know, obviously I'm of Greek background. I was actually born in Greece.
Okay, wow.
And, you know, my dad was Greek, and so, you know, he was studying on a Fulbright in the United States. Met my mom, who was a nice Jewish girl from Long Island, from Great Neck. So you have this Greek Orthodox and this, you know, this nice little girl from Long Island, and they had this passionate love affair, and then they got married, and they went to Greece after my dad got his PhD. So my dad was in his mid-30s doing his compulsory Greek military service.
Wow.
Absurd. So I was born there. So I was actually, my mom went to labor on the island of Mykonos, where they had a house. And then, but I was born in Athens, and then we came back to the States. But for my whole life, well, a couple of things. One is we'd go back every summer
that's what Greeks do. Mom Greek
too. What we do. Yep. But number two is I grew up in this kind of really crazy multicultural atmosphere. Well, my mom is this, you know, Jewish girl from Long Island. My dad's this Greek Orthodox, and we celebrated like 50,000 holidays.
Right.
And that combined with, you know, traveling all the time. And then my dad, when I was 10, he took a 1-year sabbatical to go teach in Algeria. And so this is crazy. My mom put me on a plane. I remember when I was 10 years old, and off I went by myself, flew to Paris, met my dad in Algeria, and him and I spent a month driving around the Sahara Desert, 2,000 miles in a Volkswagen minibus.
Jesus,
sleeping in the desert, you know, in oases, and just crazy adventure. So I fell in love with the Middle East then. And so, you know, I knew I wanted to do something kind of internationally overseas, and I think I probably read a Tom Clancy novel or two, and then just, you know, I went to Cornell University for undergrad and grad school, and then, you know, there's career fair, and I applied to the agency, and off I went. The only job, the scary thing is, it literally was aside from, it's the only job I've ever had, real job. I've had other real jobs, but the only like kind of adult job. But as I was waiting for my clearance, I remember I worked for like 6 months at the Banana Republic. So,
oh shit!
Of course, you know, this was back in, you know, 1992. So I think and when you work there, you could get discounted clothes. So I thought it was pretty cool. So I think I just blew all my salary on clothes.
That's so funny. At least you were ready to go to work, I guess.
Banana Republic in New Jersey, and then in I think Menlo Park Mall. Anyway, so then I moved to DC and off I went to the agency, and it's the only job I ever had.
And I mean, in the agency, you raised yourself up to like a pretty senior level. It's not like you were just like some case officer. You were, what is it called, the SIS, right? Like senior.
Yeah. I started off. I actually started off as an analyst for the first 2 or 3 years, because I had a master's degree from Cornell, and so they hired me as an analyst, and then I wanted to switch over to operations. So then I became a case officer, and then which was the best job on the entire planet, because your job as an operations officer, as case officer, is to spot, assess, develop, recruit, and handle spies, agents that we had. And so that's tremendous, because you have this incredible relationship with another human being who's putting their life on the line for the United States. And then you get promoted to management. And so eventually I made it to what's the Senior Intelligence Service, which is the equivalent of a general officer, 1 or 2 star, 3-star, 4-star general. So yes, I had a very successful career. And when I retired, I was in the Senior Intelligence Service. So I had a good run. It's just it's one of those things. But I'll tell you, the early part of your career, when you're actually on the street as a case officer, I bet a lot of police officers feel the same way. When you're a beat cop, that is the most fun of my career. When you get farther up into management, it's all about resources and headaches.
Yeah, you're dealing with a whole different type of like.
Yeah.
Would you so like we'll get into why you retired from the agency and stuff like that, but like if you were still there right now, are you like at this point? What do they call the 7th floors? Like where like the honchos work?
Right.
Like you were gunning for at that point senior.
Maybe. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, that's a lot of that based on luck, but I would have been considered for those positions. But who knows? It's just that's a lot of luck. There's a lot of great people there, and so
sure,
that would have been. But that's what that probably would be something I would be, circling around now. But again, and I tell you, I don't, I had to retire for health reasons, but I don't regret that I wasn't. That I'm still there, only in the sense of again, the most fun is the job when you're on the street, overseas an environment, not working in an office, and so that's something that you can never get back. So it just life's a journey, and so there's one of the things that happened to me that I couldn't do it anymore. The other thing is that you get your body starts breaking down as you get older. I remember when I was a base chief in Afghanistan in 2011 or 2012. And I remember, I was 40 plus years old flying around in helicopters, and I'm thinking, man, I'm too old to do this now.
Yeah.
My back hurts, my knee hurts.
I feel like a base chief in Afghanistan is a little bit different than like you were a base chief in like Athens or something, or like in the UK, something like a little bit more pushy.
You still got to work hard. But yeah, so I did a kind of variety of different jobs. I did a lot of war zone stuff, but I also did more kind of traditional, conventional postings. And I've been I've been critical of the organization for how they treated me in my desire for healthcare. I just was on CNN the other day, and I wrote an op-ed there, and so went on the Today Show and other things. But I do love the organization and the mission, and I have a lot of friends there, of course, still, and so I really believe in the profession of intelligence. I just wasn't treated that well in terms of my need for healthcare, and so that's why I had to.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like people could check out. Yeah, people could check out first and foremost the GQ article, which is awesome, and your op-ed. I read it. I mean, I read another thing too. You were talking about your former boss, the guy who died of a heart, like how like a nice of a guy he was and stuff like that. Right. I could totally see where you guys, you're serving in Afghanistan or Iraq, like you're seeing the shit go down, like for real. It's not just some cushy gig. You're becoming. I mean, it's impossible to not become close with these people.
Well, so one of my leadership principles that I talk about based on my time at CIA is just is what I call family values, which is obviously not something I made up, but I have so many examples of this, of the kind of the cohesive unit. So everything from the team that I ran in Afghanistan back in 2011, 2012, each year we still meet at a bar and all kind of hang out and swap stories, and that's pretty simplistic, but it's wonderful. But even things like so I tell the story. This will resonate with you as well. So I'd come back from Iraq in 2003, and I was fortunate. I received what was called the Distinguished Intelligence Medal, which is one of it's a pretty serious honor. It's one of the agency's highest awards. And at the ceremony, my father came, and the director at the time was George Tenet, who obviously is Greek. And let me just preface this, that my father, as a Greek, was not a real fan of the CIA after kind of the CIA support in the 70s for the Greek junta. And so he was never thrilled with my career choice, but whatever. But he comes to the ceremony, and George Tenet takes him aside, and they speak together for 15 minutes in Greek. And afterwards, my father comes back, and I said, and he had tears in his eyes. And I said, what did you talk about? He said, nothing, wouldn't tell me. And then when I saw the director later on, I said, what did you tell my dad? And he said, I told him you were a hero for what you did in Iraq. And so how do I not have incredible feelings towards an organization, and to George Tenet in particular, but to an organization after a story like that?
Sure.
Which this was, my father was not thrilled with where I went to work, but our director takes the time to say something like that to my dad, and to this day, my father, he's Greek, so he's like, I still don't like where you work, but he goes, I like George Tenet, he's a good man.
Sure.
So it's typical Greek.
I mean, listen, that's a great tidbit where the director took the time to talk with your dad in Greek for 15 minutes. Like, sometimes.
Are you kidding me? Right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
And so I have other stories like that too. So my mom died when I was in Afghanistan years later, 2012. She passed away suddenly, so I had to get back. And I was on the border with Pakistan. So it's a ridiculous trip over different helicopter flights and some C-130 flights, and then a jet flight from Kabul back to DC, and then I got to get from DC to New Jersey to go bury my mom. My parents were divorced, so my father really couldn't help. I mean, he would help, but anyway. I remember leaving our base, and the weather was terrible, and we have the best pilots in the world. These are former special operations pilots,
former 160th guys, like
the 160th, 100%. These are all the TF 160 guys, and so they are. We're stuck in this kind of, it's fogged in this mountain pass, and we're hovering for like 45 minutes. They're trying to get through, and we finally get through, and we land on another base. And I went to them afterwards. I said, come on, guys, I was crazy. Like, it's okay. Like, let's just call this whole thing off. And they said, hey, boss, we know your mom died, and we're getting you back home. So again, I go back to things like, it gives me chills talking about it, but sure, that's the kind of organization it is, with people who will do stuff like that for you. And it was, that's when I talk about family values, that's the feelings I have. Now, I will preface, I really did have a big public battle with them to get me healthcare. So,
sure. I want to get into that also.
Yeah, it's not all roses, but it's a place I feel very strongly about, because it's not a 9-to-5 job. I mean, this was my entire life and identity, and your family's caught up in it. My family traveled all around the world, and so it's obviously I think I'm going to need therapy forever after this, because a lot of conflicting emotions about the place. But I did love the line of work, and I loved a lot of the people I worked with.
So you were in Afghanistan in 11-12. So you ran the op for bin Laden? Is that what you said?
No. I wish I did, but I didn't. No, I didn't.
What? I know you're not going to answer this, but was there a walk-in?
Oh, for what? For bin Laden?
Yeah.
Just watch Zero Dark 30.
Stop, Mark. No, it's a good movie. It's well done, and I love the Hurt Locker, and I like their filmmaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not a real.
No, there's been some books written on about what happened with UBL. I think the story of the hunt for bin Laden is I think has a couple different parts. One is the tenacity of our counterterrorism center, and and select individuals, and not just one, as it's portrayed in the book, but a whole bunch. It's portrayed in the movie, but there's a lot of people who worked on that for one of my friends has worked on that for 9 years. Just extraordinary. I mean, nobody does that. And so just the kind of the, what do you call it? The just the detective work, just following leads and chasing stuff down. And the other part that's really important is our relationship with the U.S. military. And so, since 9/11, CIA's relationship specifically with the special operations community has been extraordinary. And so, the amount of trust between the two sides. And so,
yeah, it's got to be symbiotic. I mean, it has to. Yeah. It won't work if it's not.
Right. And so it's an amazing story, and there's a lot of heroes around in the CIA and at JSOC as well, and so that's we'll but no, unfortunately I was not involved in that operation. I have a lot of friends who were, but they're heroes in my mind for sure.
Okay, so there was a walk-in. Fine, thank you.
No, there wasn't a
walk-in. Yeah, listen, I mean, Zero Dark 30 is a good movie. It's very well done. Catherine Bigelow's a tremendously good filmmaker.
Right.
I'm a little bit of a snob because I've made a movie and stuff. So
right.
She did a great job. Jessica Chastain's 10 out of 10 actor, and everybody else in there. But that's not really what went down.
My favorite actor in that was the one who played the interrogator who had the monkey.
What's his name, man? I'm trying to remember his name because he's a great actor.
Stuff too. I thought he did a great job in that.
He played didn't he play Bobby not Ted Kennedy in the Chappaquiddick? I think
I don't know. That's a good question.
He's a solid actor.
The most fun that we have with these movies is trying to figure out who the actual people are that they're portraying.
Sure.
So for us, those of us inside, some of it's quite obvious. Some of them are, of course, kind of people melded together.
Yeah.
Maybe several different individuals, but so that was it was interesting. Now, look, I mean, it's obviously the agency cooperated with, the director on this, but what they got right about that entire operation was the relationship between the agency and the U.S. military, and that's something that's really good. I mean, it takes a long time to develop that, and I gave a lecture 2 days ago over Zoom to National Defense University on kind of the future of the relationship between the U.S. military and the CIA. And it's one of the things I talked about was this was born after it blossomed after 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
The Abbottabad raid was one of the highlights, but we have to kind of take that relationship forward as we go to our kind of new adversaries, or old adversaries, if you want to call it, like China and Russia.
Sure. I mean, yeah, you could totally see it evolving back to that, and like that it's going to be way less kinetic for sure, right? We're not going to have as many boots on the ground. And sure, their proxy wars happening right now with the Quds Force, like they're paying for everybody in fucking Middle East to wreak havoc. So that'll always be an issue. What do you think about Trump pulling us out of the nuclear deal with Iran?
I was not so look, all I can say is the 4 years of the Trump administration, when we pulled out of the JCPOA, Iran continued on its efforts to build a bomb. So the criticisms of the JCPOA, some probably are valid, some are not. The Trump's maximum pressure campaign and pulling us out of the JCPOA did not work. Iran is closer to a bomb as ever before, and so with Biden kind of committing to go back to it, I mean, like the bottom line is all I want is a policy that's going to work, and we certainly, I think the 4 years of Trump was not successful. I think Biden's going to have a hard time going back to the deal because the world has changed,
sure.
The Iranians have changed, but this is a tough one. But the maximum pressure campaign didn't work, and so we have to find a mechanism for Iran not to be able to produce a nuclear weapon or certainly move forward on it. And so these are tough problems,
right?
But it's certainly not conducive to a campaign soundbite. I'm going to pull out of the deal. I'm going to go back to the deal. A lot of that is it's much more complicated than that. It's
extremely nuanced. I mean, like you're talking. The last deal they probably were negotiating for over it's like over a year, probably more.
Right.
You have to make concessions, like to make a deal happen. It's just what it is. Like in whether you're trying to make a deal for a car or whether you're trying to make a super nuanced nuclear deal with Iran.
Right. And there's going to be. So I remember asking friends of mine who were really involved in this after the deal under Obama, the JCPOA was announced. I said, "Is this good?" And they're like, "Yeah, kind of. We think so." But they weren't gushing.
Sure.
And just like then you ask friends like, "Okay, was the Trump's maximum campaign pressure?" They're like, "Well, we are trying to thwart Iranian influence in the region, but their nuclear program is moving forward. So, not really." Neither of. I mean, it's as you put it perfectly. It's really nuanced.
Yeah.
And anyone who has these kind of it's someone running for office who has a political slogan to say I'm for it or against it. That is really simplistic.
All right, I'm going to move back down to Iraq, 2002.
Okay.
Leading up to the war, where were you at there?
So we had a team. We were living up in the mountains with the Kurds, and kind of doing the military calls it kind of operational prep of the environment, but that's not what we call it. But anyway, it was just prepping for a potential invasion.
Yeah.
Working and living with the Kurds. Really kind of unique time. One of my takeaways from that, which I found fascinating, I've written about it a lot too, is just the Kurds are a pretty unique people, a nation, and boy, they've been screwed over so many times. So they've had relationships and been screwed over by the United States, by the Israelis, by the Iranians, by the Iraqis, by the Syrians, by the Turks, and so. But really, people I came to really admire, and so yeah, so it was so I was there for a couple months, and then I joined up with our special operations forces for the infill into Baghdad in April of 2003.
What do you think of the reason we went to? Yeah. What do you think? Do you think we should have went into Iraq?
Oh boy, that's so
I don't know if you can really say or whatever.
No, of course I can, because I'm a private citizen. I have First Amendment rights now, so I can say anything I want. As long as I abide by my secrecy agreement. Look, so there's a couple things that I like to talk about on this too. So Saddam Hussein was a terrible human being.
Agreed.
He was a gross abuser of human rights. He was a mass murderer. And there's nothing more that the world is a better place with him dead and his regime taken out. I think a couple things. Clearly, the analytic call on weapons of mass destruction was really damaging. That the agency got it wrong, and that's something that CIA had to live with, and certainly made a lot of reforms around. So the premise, was you can't not comment on that. So the premise was wrong. But one of the things that to this day I really believe is, having been on the ground early in April, March and April really of 2003. The decisions that were made by the Bush administration to disband the Iraqi military for this de-Baathification were disastrous. And they didn't have to be that way, because if you remember, in Japan and Germany post World War II, we did not do that.
Totally.
And I remember clearly, and this is just on a personal level, we certainly, no one on the ground was recommending that we do this. These are political decisions that were made really by this kind of the neoconservative crowd back in Washington. And I think that was the disaster. So while the premise, the WMD call, was wrong, we did take out a horrible human being, a mass murderer. And I don't think Iraq had to devolve into the disaster it turned out to be if we had not done some really stupid things. And so kind of that's where I kind of sit on this. Was I a cheerleader at the time? Look, I was a young officer. I was one of the one of several chosen to go in. It was, when I say it was an exciting time, it's the wrong word, but it was,
I understand that.
Fear. And frankly, and this is a bit of a cop out. It's not my call. I'm an instrument of the United States government. So, what I believe in or not really doesn't matter. If I'm tasked to do something, as long as it's legal, I'm going to do it. Looking back though, I think that the real mess, aside from that analytic call, which was incorrect, but the real mess was this kind of post-war purge of the entire Iraqi government, military, security services, which really led to the insurgency.
Yeah, I completely agree with disbanding the Iraqi military was an absolute joke. Like made no sense, right? And I'm just a dummy from Brooklyn, and I know that it makes no sense. In terms of the CIA was doing their job, right? Collecting evidence, collecting information and stuff, giving it to the people that make decisions. That's what they do. You don't think they cherry pick shit to get into Iraq?
Well, they certainly did, but the agency did get their call on WMD wrong. So that's just a fact. You can't get away from it, and there's been a lot of reforms since then. But it's one of those things. As a CIA officer, especially someone who was chosen, in my in my retirement to speak publicly. There's a couple of us. There's probably 10 or so of us from the senior ranks who really do a lot of stuff in the media and talk a lot. It would be remiss for me not to kind of talk about the mistakes we made.
Of course, yeah.
I'm not a cheerleader for the organization. We made terrible mistakes in terms of that analytic call, and there's been a lot of reforms since then. So you don't get that wrong. I compare that to the analytic call that was made in terms of Russian interference. There was this product called the ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment, that was produced in late 2016 and then early 2017, which was the analytic call that the Russians interfered in the 2016 elections. That document will stand the test of time.
Sure.
And you can see, and it is completely sound and based on all source reporting. And so I think that we've made a lot of good steps towards trying to get things right. Because we're gonna have to live with the Iraq WMD call, and that's just that's the way it is. I can't defend it.
And listen, if I was in your position, right, 02, yeah, I want to go to Curtis. I want to be there. I want to go there. This is what's happening. Obviously, it's over my head, right, over my pay grade. Yeah. I'm gonna go there. And also back then, to, in 02, 03, whether we were getting bad information or not, 66% of the country, including Congress, was gung-ho for Iraq.
Right.
And
a lot of people thought Iraq had something to do with 9/11, which is not true, and we knew it wasn't true. But that was, again, that when you talk about cherry-picked intelligence, sure. I mean, I think that the Bush administration was doing a lot of that too. But again, one of the things you do when you're kind of on the tip of the spear, whether you're a Navy SEAL or a Green Beret or you're a CIA case officer, when your country says who wants to go, you kind of raise your hand and say, send me. And you want to be the first on the ground anywhere. And I don't care if it's in the Balkans or in Africa or in the Middle East or in South Asia. One of the things that I was able to do several times is be on some of those initial kind of forays into different places. And it's, that's why I joined up. For better or worse, I never served in Europe. I served in places where there was, lack of running water and electricity, and it was a lot of time in the Middle East and South Asia. And that's what I want. I didn't want any kind of cushy stuff. I wanted to do the hard stuff. I mean, I remember, in Iraq, I think I went 6 weeks without a shower. And it was coming home. It was pretty gnarly.
Your wife's fucking hosing you down on the driveway.
But she said my ears were black.
Wow. Holy
but that's the kind of stuff I loved. We'd have, it was on the team we had, in going into Baghdad, we had a contest on, whose hair would, my hair is kind of going away now, but whose hair would stick up the most. I mean, 6 weeks is a long time. You take baby wipes to kind of go to places where you got to get some sanitary stuff going on, but it's nasty. But you kind of relish that stuff.
Sure. I mean, that's where like real deal camaraderie is born, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like that's where when the shit's the toughest is when you become the closest with the people next to you.
Absolutely.
Kurdistan. Kurds have been our allies forever, right? What do you think about a few years ago when he just let Turkey roll over them?
So that was, so to me, so the job, a lot of times the job at the CIA or same thing with kind of, the special operations forces, when they conduct unconventional warfare is we work with indigenous units, local, the local population. So when we do things like betray these folks, betray our allies, it's kind of a body blow. And I think there's a couple things when it comes to the Kurds, and these were the Syrian Kurds that Trump so it wasn't the Iraqi Kurds we're talking about, who I was working with. But Trump, kind of pulled us out, and then we went back in, but pulled us out of the relationship with the Syrian Kurds. And the problem with that is kind of, these are U.S. forces that are kind of embedded with these indigenous units, the local units. And so you have this camaraderie. I mean, you're living with them all the time. In Afghanistan with our units, they saved our lives all the time. And so, you're eating with them, sleeping with them, that they're kind of a part of the fight together. And so kind of just up and leaving with no notice is a betrayal. Now, you
literally a phone call, right? It was a phone, like crazy.
But you got to take the training wheels off. We're not always going to be there, and so it's not that I would argue for a long-term relationship with these groups.
Sure.
But there's a way to kind of cut the umbilical cord, and so doing it overnight was really bad. And I think you saw. It was pretty extraordinary, especially for very secretive units like special operations forces, not the agency. But I think there was interviews in the press with some JSOC personnel on the ground there who were horrified because overnight they were told to just pack up and leave. And these were people. I mean, the Syrian Kurds, really led the fight against ISIS and died in large numbers. And so, and when we do something like that, it can take, it can have ramifications all over the world. So fine, we do that there and we betrayed our Syrian Kurdish allies. But what about when we're working with an indigenous unit in Africa? Well, they're no dummies. They have CNN. They're like, hey, you guys going to fuck us over? Right. Just so it has that, because the promises that America makes are, you really want to try to keep them as much as possible. And you're smart about it as someone who's done this before. You don't say we're going to be with you in perpetuity forever. But
you manage expectations.
You've got to manage, and if the umbilical cord is going to be cut, you start telling them, and you start saying, hey, you guys are going to have to fight your own sometime soon, but you don't do it overnight.
Not like, Orange Face got a phone call from Erdogan, and now we got to leave.
Which it looks like certainly is what happened, and that's a whole other issue on kind of decision making and kind of a chaotic foreign policy. But yeah, right. And so that's your net, because when you go in these relationships, you do give some assurances, and packing up and leaving overnight is not something that you ever want. I really felt for the U.S. forces on the ground, who clearly felt terrible.
All right, so I want to go to the GQ article and what's happened to you. It's why you retired and stuff like that. You became the station. You were going to become the station chief to Moscow.
No. So no,
Sorry,
I was not. So I was assigned to headquarters, just kind of overseeing. And I was the deputy operations chief over kind of Europe and Eurasia. And so, I made a trip to Moscow to see our ambassador, and to
so
do.
You're like high level headquarter guy,
right?
Okay.
So I was going out to see the ambassador, and to meet with the Russians as well. We do have liaison relationships with the Russians. It's in lousy shape, but we do meet with them. You always have to have a channel open. So I went there in December 2017, and that's where kind of things in my career kind of certainly went astray. And ultimately I had to retire. I got as I've talked about, certainly the GQ article, and then today's show with Andrew Mitchell, and then CNN with Kylie Atwood and Jake Tapper. I mean, I really, this was really strange, me coming out in public on this, but I had to do so because I got really sick, and then really battled with the agency for proper healthcare for many years.
So you were in Moscow. So you were just basically, you wanted to meet the ambassador, but you're a high up guy in the agency. They obviously know who you are. They know what your position is. And they hit you like what they hit like the same people in Havana, right? With some kind of microwave, whatever. That's the going theory.
So I was kind of in the middle of the night. I woke up with my head spinning, incredible case of vertigo and nausea, terrible headache, my head spinning, tinnitus, ringing in my ears. Some event,
it's like a concussion.
Event. Yeah, and so ultimately, years later, I was diagnosed by Walter Reed, and their National Intrepid Center of Excellence, the leading TBI, center on the planet. But I was diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury, with a TBI. But at the time, it was unknown, and I kind of I had this, it was again, I'd been in Iraq and Afghanistan, I've been shot at a million times. This was the most terrifying experience of my life. I made it, kind of through the rest of the trip, with some other bouts of kind of nausea and dizziness and vertigo. And then when I got back to the States, my health really took a terrible nosedive, and I couldn't work for, I was barely working. I missed in the total about 4 months of work. Couldn't make it through a day again without, and frankly, even to this day now, I mean, in our discussion now, I've had a headache for 3 straight years, in the back of my head, and really kind of fought the agency and the medical staff, because when I came back and I was tested under these Havana protocols, I didn't look like necessarily what happened to some of the U.S. officials in Havana. But I knew something was wrong, and so ultimately, even after I retired, I had to go public, and I chose to speak to a great journalist at GQ, Julia Yaffe, who's a true Russia expert.
Oh my God, she's so sharp.
Tell
her to come on my podcast. I've been messaging her so much.
She's a fantastic writer. She's a wonderful person. She knows Russian, speaks fluent Russian.
Unbelievable.
And wrote wrote an article which I was concerned about, because first I was going public, but that I didn't want it to be for me to sound bitter towards the organization, because again, as I've told you, I have very conflicting feelings, but I was just angry that I wasn't getting the healthcare. And after the article, there was a lot of public pressure put on the agency, so I ended up going to Walter Reed, finally, in January for a month program, which I just come out of. But boy, it was really kind of a traumatic time for me, because I had going public, and I never violated my secrecy agreement, but nonetheless, going public in this fashion, was really tough.
Yeah, I mean, you knew you were going to probably maybe get some pushback. You're criticizing, even though it's one specific thing about the agency, it's still the place you worked for. Relatively,
there was people very upset with me, and so that was one of the things that you learn in a place like Walter Reed is you have your physical injury, which was the TBI, but there was the moral injury, and the moral injury for me is that it was an organization that didn't take care of me. So what you do is, when you do something like the job of a CIA case officer, an operations officer, is you sign up for really tough assignments, and the pact you have with your leadership is that if you ever get jammed up, with some kind of health event, that they're going to take care of you. So I'll raise my hand and go, but they got to have my back, and they failed on that, and that to me was a terrible failure in leadership.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's a bummer, man. And I think it's like a broader problem too, with like different institutions as well, like because you see veterans that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And so, so you're right. So this is not, and essentially it's a giant bureaucracy, which is, probably worried about liability, but nonetheless, they violated that pact. And so, after I went public, I also had a lot of friends in senior places. So I know, three former directors, and I know called into our old building, my old building, and they put a lot of pressure to get me to Walter Reed. So I ended up going. So that was, so ultimately, I don't want to sue the place. I can't make any money. I mean, my public battle was to get to Walter Reed, and I've gotten there. And so, the thing though is that it's still a long journey. So right now my head is killing me right now. Like, so we'll do this talk, and I'll be exhausted the rest of the day. So I have, but what Walter Reed gave me was some tools and some hope. So I'm probably 10% better. Still have the headaches, but I still have a long way to go. But it's
increments, man.
Yeah, it's small increments, and then you learn about TBI, and the amazing thing about Walter Reed is that I think it's a national treasure. But ultimately, 20 years of war have decimated the U.S. military, and these are silent wounds. Traumatic brain injury. So I always say I wish I was shot. I really do. Because you have something you could fix.
Yeah.
But ultimately, this is stuff. It's something that just is kind of takes an incredible amount of time, energy, and patience for you to get better, and sometimes you don't. But just those 20 years of war, our special operations community has been just beat up, and so I went through with some serious some great heroes and warriors, and it's a pretty humbling experience. And so I'm not in the best of shape. I'm okay.
Sure.
I wrote a book on leadership. I'm talking to you now. I sound coherent, but again, after we do this, what are we doing? We're about an hour now.
Yeah.
We do it for a couple more minutes. Like, I'll be tired the rest of the day, and so it's I got a ways to go, but but I'm getting there.
Yeah, I mean, listen. As long as, like, I read your op-ed, you left with hope, which is what you need. I mean,
Yeah.
What else can besides being completely cured, right?
Well, look, yeah, of course, and the one of the things I understand now, fortunately, I don't have an addictive personality, but I'll tell you one thing: I understand completely why people get hooked on opioids or on alcohol or any kind of drugs. I mean, right, like, I would feel better right now if I had a scotch. If I popped a pill, because I am just in pain all the time. So my head hurts all the time. Fortunately, I have some tools, and a lot of it is this. So one of the amazing things is that, you sit around there with a bunch of, former SEALs and Green Berets, and you do yoga, you meditate, because there's that soft science, but it's science. It really works. And so, I had one former member of the Army's most legendary unit. He's a Green Beret, and then two others from two other former SEALs call me after I went public and said they had actually gone to Walter Reed as well. And the thing you find, so surely they're going to do all the imaging, and they're going to check you out. You do a lot of stuff on there's a pharmaceutical option. I mean, they are going to look at some medications for you, but the meditation piece and the mindfulness and the yoga, the things that you wouldn't expect the toughest son of a bitches on the planet to go through. And I wasn't there. Trust me, as we're sitting around doing yoga in this thing, like, I'm the one with a little belly. These guys are rock solid SEALs still in their 40s.
Yeah.
But they believe in this stuff. And so that softer side really helps. And so I'm all into meditation now and stuff.
I think any edge you can get, you should take.
Well, why wouldn't you, right?
Yeah.
And that was their theory too. And so one of my passions now, it's good you brought this up, is, so it's not only that I got to go to Walter Reed, and there are others at the CIA who have been affected by what happened to me, and they have to get there. And that's what I push for publicly. But also, I want to see a full, mindful wellness program put together. And the special operations community does have this. So the idea is, you don't want to do this at the end of your career. You want to be doing this proactively during your career. So if you go down to Virginia Beach, for example, at some of the SEAL team units, their cafeteria, there's no soda. It's a health food place. They have physical therapists. They have, and I can say, when you go to Google, or if you go to Accenture, or go to Microsoft, what do they have for their employees? Health food, free or access to physical therapists and massage and yoga and acupuncture. The CIA has to adopt this stuff, which is wellness and mindfulness. And it's, because here's why, and this is, one of the SEALs told me this. He said, if we can, squeeze 10 more years out of you, after spending millions to train you, it's pretty smart.
Right.
And if you tell us we got to stand upside down on our head and it's going to help, we'll do it. I mean, who cares what it is?
Sure.
So it's not lifting weights. It's doing flexibility stuff. There's a great book that's called what is it? The supple leopard. It's a book about flexibility and stretching. So I mean, you do all this weird shit that you and I growing up, and I would have gotten beaten up in New Jersey if I was trying to do yoga growing up. But I'll tell you one thing: you see a lot of tough dudes doing yoga right now, and meditating, and that's just the right thing to do. And so that's kind of the kick I'm on now. Is I want to try to get through it, and I've had this, I have this public face now, and I have this platform, but to get the CIA to kind of adopt some of these wellness programs. So that's I think that's important.
That's awesome. What's funny was I had a question for you. What would you do if you were the director of CIA right now?
Yeah. So it's stuff like that. And, there's, if we're going to, and the other part, one of the things I would do is really, it's a whole separate discussion on technology, but, there's, the explosion of artificial intelligence. You look at these private investigative firms like Bellingcat, who uncover all this crazy stuff the Russians are doing, whether they're trying to kill opposition leaders or kill dissidents, in Europe. The CIA's got to adopt better technology. And so a perfect example is, Facebook, and whatever you think about Facebook, doesn't matter. They announced that in the next 5 years, 50% of their employees are going to have remote work. That's extraordinary. So, but the intelligence community, the US government is not there yet because we have to work in these brick and mortar, secure facilities. Well, hold on a second. Google and Facebook have billions in proprietary technology. They don't want, no, we have secrets. So do they, but if they're able to do it,
trying to steal, right?
Why are we not able to do it? And so I think that we have to have a much different attitude towards technology to kind of compete.
I think that's a top-down, bottom-up total overhaul of stuff. Because like you saw what happened with the SolarWinds hack. We're kind of not. I mean, I'm sure we do offensive stuff and we do what we can. Obviously, I don't think we're just like the victims here, but we can't just let like a wholesale breach like that happen, right? So there needs to be a legit overhaul, especially, to make people, I think people would be more productive if they were in an office environment and you made it remote or some kind of staggered situation or a hybrid way. I think morale would improve.
Oh yeah.
It's better for like overall wellness.
Right.
The only way you do that is like with secure systems that are like damn near impenetrable. And I don't think we're there yet anyway.
But I would argue, though, that if Google can do it, if Microsoft and Facebook can do it, and they have billions in proprietary technology,
totally,
that the CIA should be able to do that. And so, I think now I will tell you that the Bill Burns, the new CIA director, who was received Senate confirmation yesterday. I think he's the exact right guy for this.
That's good.
And so I'm excited about that. But that we have to move forward on kind of diversity and inclusion, on technology. On certainly on wellness. I mean, the CIA has to kind of be brought into 2021, and it's a giant organization. It moves like an aircraft carrier.
I was just gonna say, like, it's so funny. I was like, you're trying to turn a tanker. You know what I mean? Like,
yep, exactly. And so, but for us to retain talent, so if we want to attract, I won't say people like myself, but people coming out of college, like, so I right out of college, I wanted to go into CIA. Well, they can look at Google. And they're going to get, free food, free massages, a gazillion days of paid vacation, access to a shrink, and physical therapist. Now, I'm not saying we have to do all that, but in the U.S. government, you get nothing. you get a freaking pat in the head and a low salary. So we got to do a little better. We're never going to be able to pay a college graduate, $100,000 coming out of college.
Sure. I mean, I think that's expected though. If you're trying to recruit a recruitable person who's, has a choice, can go to Google or Facebook and make $200,000 right away. The perks and you're not going to the CIA to make money.
But you got to do a little better.
I agree.
And because I think the interesting thing for me at the end of my career, it was trying to relate to this generation coming in. And boy, so, leadership when I came in was you get screamed at by some old dude who probably was in the military and just listen. Yeah. It's much different now. It's compassionate leadership. It's, being able to listen, having this kind of incredible 360 feedback. I mean, because you know what? And there's the old guard at the agency that rebels against this. It's at their peril because the young people will walk. And so you kind of have to, because we're not going to get the best and the brightest then. And by the way, all those kind of leadership traits I'm talking about, compassionate leadership and listening and being more inclusive, like that actually works. It's smart. Right before I left, I remember, and it was kind of forced on us, but it was, they said, they said, try some new techniques with your employees. And so I had thousands, I was managing a lot of people when I left, but I remember At one point, I took a small group of about 20, and it was this, and this is just I wanted to see how it worked. And they said, all right, what are we doing today? And I said, all right, we're going to sit around in a circle, and I want everyone to tell me something or tell each other something about yourself that we didn't know. What do you do on the side? Now think about this. Now we're all operations officers, right? So what do you do on the side? And so someone would say, well, you know what, I'm in a rock band. I'm a musician. Someone else would say, I love classical ballet, or someone else would say, I paint. Why is that important? Because let's say 3 days later, we come across a target that we want to recruit. Let's say it's a Russian official. Now, I didn't know that I had all these officers with all these incredible backgrounds, but we learned that Russian official, guess what? Say one of my officers may have played, he goes, I played college hockey. Got it. We know this Russian official loves hockey. Well, wait a second. If I hadn't had that conversation with my team, and I didn't know we had that talent level, which had nothing to do with work, I wouldn't know to put that case officer against that target, and something's going to click. And so you learn stuff about people. Now, that's not the CIA I grew up in, but that's got to be the CIA in 2021 and beyond, where we have these incredible talent, people with talents, and you kind of just, because it's, you're looking for the best athlete. When we say diversity and inclusion, it's important for America to have a diverse CIA, but diversity and inclusion is a weapon. Like, I want a female operations officer on the street, wearing, hijab, a cover on a surveillance route. You know why? Because nobody suspects them.
No one's talking. Yeah.
I don't necessarily want someone who looks, a 6'2" former Navy SEAL with arm sleeve tattoos. I'm being serious. And so that's why the diversity inclusion, that's your weapon to win. And so, these are kind of the things I think that the agency is going to get there, but it kind of does move slowly.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, listen, it's not going to move as fast as like a Silicon Valley.
Right.
I mean, hopefully it gets there sooner rather than later, for sure. Because sure, I'm a softy liberal pussy. I still think we need the agency and we need our military to be at a certain level of strength, because like, you're a senior officer and they fucking attacked you. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, I agree.
And you're not even operating, right? You're going to dinner, you're going to see meet and greet, whatever, you're just going for a trip, basically. Right. You're not a threat.
No, that's the amazing thing. After all the crazy shit I did, I ended up getting jammed up at a 5-star hotel. And but I've also thought about this a lot. I'm not a fan of the Russians, but I wasn't necessarily a fan of Al Qaeda or Hezbollah or the Iraqi military. And so we have our adversaries, and my time came up. It's amazing it didn't come earlier. But I actually don't have any kind of terrible animosity towards anyone. We have a lot of enemies in the world, and sure. my time was up. And frankly, I was kind of more dismayed again at the lack of the agency giving me health care. Now that I've gotten the health care that I deserve and need, I would like to see us put a hurt on the Russians. I mean, I'm not gonna lie on that.
I think now that Biden's here,
right?
We are going to there's no stopping us anymore. And whether
his comment yesterday was a good one when he said, or 2 days ago, he said, Putin's a killer, and the Russians freaked out. But I don't think Trump ever would have said that. In fact, he didn't say that. If you remember, there was a question on this, and he said that, I think Trump's response was, we kill people too. The moral relativism, which is nonsense. Sure, we kill people in a kinetic CT strike. We're going to kill an Al Qaeda member who wants to come after and kill Americans.
Sure, and also, you can't be giving Israeli intelligence to Russian fucking ambassadors in the Oval Office, dude. You're the president.
I would not have counseled that.
What are you doing, bro? All right, maybe there is no direct connection between him and Russia. Fine. He's not an asset. He's not an agent of Russia. But you're making it kind of obvious that you really like them at the very minimum.
So one of the things that people went crazy. So one of when I decided to kind of come out and talk in the media, not about my health issue, but just as kind of a commentator, and I've enjoyed that. And I work with the agency CIA's publication review board, so whatever I say gets cleared by them, and I'm super careful on that. But one of the things that I talked about, which I think some on the right got really upset about, is this is the equivalent. So what Trump did in that Oval session with who is it, with Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, and Sergei Kislyak, the ambassador, where he kind of said, kind of gave him a pass on Russian election interference. That's like George W. Bush inviting bin Laden to the Oval after 9/11 and just saying, hey, my bad, like, we're good. So that's not a very good moment in American history.
No.
What happened there, and what I don't understand. Look, CIA is a very conservative place. Half of my friends are Republicans. I have dear friends and family members who are Trumpies, which is hard, but they are. But one thing I could never get through to them, or could never, what it just didn't work, was this, this notion of Trump's fascination with Russia. That to me is just inexcusable, and really the Republicans as a whole kind of pushing the Russian disinformation campaign. I just don't get. There's this whole move now to strip Congressman Eric Swalwell of his role on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence for his alleged issue with a Chinese national, which he apparently reported to the FBI.
Like, so, he did the right thing.
He did the right thing, but the same people are the ones who were pushing Russian disinformation. The GOP was pushing Russian disinformation. So it's so wildly hypocritical now. And so we're so politicized that you can't even have a rational discussion on these types of issues. And I think that I'm hoping that with President Biden, I can go back to having, normal discussions with my Republican friends, because under Trump, my head would explode all the time. And so
it could
never be productive. I'll debate policy all day. Like I'm on foreign policy, I'm pretty conservative. On social, on domestic policy, social policy, I'm a crazy liberal. I believe in, I'm pretty progressive. I believe in, we should have, a universal health care. I believe in, gay rights. I believe that, abortion should be, people should have access. But these are policy issues that we can discuss. When it came to Trump, it was impossible to discuss anything.
The interesting thing is, like, Trump was an outsider, disruptor, like you said. If somebody with good intentions and had like good faith behind their arguments and their motives, was doing that and was a disruptor and was able to like tap into this support that he's tapped into, that person could have done like some real meaningful change in terms of everything you just said right now. Like, they could have done stuff to like really shape the government in the right way, get corporations out of them, try and like limit that, do the things that you need to do to like kind of make it fair for everybody.
And yeah, I'm right. And so I think he was the wrong messenger. I mean, the idea that Trump was this champion of the working class is so fucking ludicrous.
Crazy.
And look, and so it's my son is he's in college now playing baseball, but he's a big high school baseball player. So and when you play baseball down in the Mid-Atlantic here, like we spent tons of every summer we're down traveling to North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. I've spent a ton of time in the Deep South with kind of super conservative folks. And they believe what they believe, and got it. I respect them for that. And they were still wonderful people. I just didn't agree with them on policy stuff. But why they saw Trump as a champion of the working class is something I could never, it just is beyond me.
Yeah.
Especially when you see someone like Joe Biden, who is a working class guy, who as a senator took Amtrak every day from Delaware to DC. He is not a wealthy man at all. But the idea that Trump was the champion of the working class, I mean, and because I mean, I grew up in New Jersey from a very kind of democratic progressive family. I lived in New York, so you kind of have that I don't know, the Democratic Party. I don't think I even knew any Republicans growing up, and so you sympathize with kind of the working class. We were a very middle class family growing up. But I'm telling you, when I go down south and I'd see these kind of people supporting Trump, who is this billionaire, I just didn't get it. I really wish there was a working class candidate.
Right.
It would make more sense to me. I just thought there's such incredible hypocrisy, and so is what it is.
It's like sad because they get duped, and then January 6th happens, and like it gets to the level of like, oh my God, what is happening right now?
Incredible, crazy. And January 6th was a really dark day. I mean, I think for a lot of us, it was really harkening back to times in the Middle East where we saw kind of insurrections and coups, and and so that was I think a lot of us, I watched in horror. And
I was watching, I was like, oh my God, what is going on?
So as a CIA officer overseas, especially in the third world, we would cover these things. So your job is to report back to Washington. So there's a demonstration, there's an assault on the palace in XYZ country. So you're there, getting firsthand accounts and getting situational awareness. Meanwhile, we're watching this happen. in the Capitol, like my head almost blew off. And kind of encouraged by the right. I mean, there's no way around this. So the idea that we're going to kind of move forward without some kind of 9/11 style commission is crazy. Like, we have to find out what happened. And there was a huge failure in the security services. And the Capitol Police and the DC Police and the National Guard, everybody failed, and nobody wants to take responsibility. But there also were Republican members of Congress who were pushing this, and that's crazy.
Mark, my own congresswoman who just got elected in the same election that was a fraud, Nicole Malliotakis, Greek lady.
She's a crazy, right? She's a crazy Trumpy, right?
She's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
She's crazy.
I know.
She voted to decertify the election, the same election she was elected in.
Right. Yep. It's nuts. I feel bad
because that.
I know. That's distressing to me. It's a Greek American.
And she's swinging around back the blue flag, right? The day after, a Capitol police officer just got fucking killed.
So you're in the district. So is that she beat Max, right?
Yeah, Max Rose. Yeah,
I liked him.
Me too.
I still like him. I mean, I thought he was fantastic. It's just
the problem with Max was, man, this district here, it's tough. You're a Democrat, it's tough. It's not gonna, every election will be a battle. And he was like the right kind of guy, straight talking dude. Seemed like a good dude. I voted for him. He lost by like 4. I mean, but it's to be on the. It's understandable because like this district's a fucking mess. Not a mess, but it's just more right.
No, I remember. So is it? When I grew up in Central Jersey, I used to go to Staten Island and play hockey all the time.
Yeah, Staten Island.
We used to play at the Nick Fatio rink. I don't know if you remember. There's this. It's probably not there anymore. So it was the Nick Fatio rink in Staten Island. Nick Fatio, famous Ranger, big tough guy.
Yeah.
From Staten Island, he made it to the NHL, but it was a rink which was kind of it was like a giant bubble blown up.
Okay.
It's probably long gone.
I don't think. Yeah,
We used to have wars there. Like, I remember, like, my dad and I running out of there, and I got in a fight in the game, and the other team's coming after me. So, Staten Island's a tough place. Holy shit.
No, it definitely is for sure. There's a lot of cops and firefighters that live there too. The people that do the jobs of the city. And what's interesting to me is like, you're a cop firefighter. I understand like there's a more right wing lean there maybe, but you're in a union. Your union protects you. Your union collectively bargains your perk, your benefits, and your salary, etc. And you're voting for right wing, where if they had their chance, they would get rid of every union in the world.
Yeah, right. Again, I think Trump, made it a policy to kind of back the blue, but I think there's some hypocrisy in that as well. And look, so I have a lot of friends who are cops, and I think ultimately, so now we're going to get into crazy topics in terms of kind of the BLM movement and stuff like that. But ultimately, where I come down on this has a lot to do with where I came from in terms of CIA. It has to do with training. And so, a cop, and I don't know if it's a New York City cop, I'm not sure exactly, but most local cops get as much get maybe a week of firearms training a year, maybe.
Madness.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And so it's not de-escalation training or defensive tactics or stuff like that. So to me, it's about recruitment. Who are we recruiting? I mean, I'm going to get in trouble if any of my friends from high school, like my friends from high school became cops, or the ones that I was like smoking pot with.
Sure.
Or they were smoking pot. I can't say I was, but I might've been. But like my parents were like, don't hang out with those guys.
Yeah.
But I love these guys. But I'm saying, but you got to train, and it's recruiting. Whether it's, I don't know if it has to be a college graduate or they have to have an associate degree, but it's vetting and recruiting the right kind of officers. It's providing training, de-escalation training, and also wellness training. Because my sympathy with police officers, and I really do sympathize with them, because it's an impossible job, is it's that same type of wellness issue where it's all going to be reactive. But you need proactive care. I mean, can you imagine, a cop this day, today, and I know you see all the abuses, but being a cop is stressful. You have, you feel like the world is against you. And so it's such a complicated issue. And meanwhile, I sympathize entirely with the Black Lives Matter movement, because I have a lot of friends who are African Americans who are like, I don't feel safe walking down the street. So it's just a complicated mess. I think when it comes down to it, if you kind of you have to look at real police reform, which means, better recruitment, better training, better wellness programs, proactive care, because that's a really hard job. And I say this too, like I say this all the time. Like I was telling my son the other day, he was in college, he was talking about careers, and he was talking about becoming a cop. And I said, look, I wish I had. Like, I could see how I would have done that. Very similar type of appeal where you're doing something for the greater good. You're kind of a member of a small elite team. And so, boy,
I think
it's
for
a
cops,
tough societal issue now.
Yeah, like cops, I think what they need is the training. I think they need recurring training, like how special operators, they train probably a third of their time, right? Let's say they're deployed and they come back and they train. Cops should be the same way. 20% of like 1 out of 5 days should be training.
Well, I read a great article. You're totally right. I read a great article the other day that actually firefighters spend a crazy amount of time training, but cops don't. So there is a difference. There's a firefighters responding to an actual fire is a small percentage of actually the job. A lot of other stuff is kind of medical calls and stuff like that. But they train like crazy, and then the police don't. And so there's got to be a way to rethink this, because the idea of defund the police, I think, is ridiculous. Banishing the police is ridiculous. But we but again, I live in a small town in Northern Virginia where we support our local police force, and I know these folks, and they they certainly have helped me and my family. And so and when there were BLM protests around here, actually the chief of police and the police force were very inclusive, and I live in Fairfax County is kind of a little bit of a different place, because there's a lot of money involved in terms of for the police force. So they actually have done a lot of proactive work and training and de-escalation type training. And so it's a crazy issue, but I would being a cop would be super stressful. So people, there's this kind of anti or feeling of being against the police now in the country. There's the same thing with kind of CIA officers every once in a while, when so I've had that feeling too, with the whole idea of the issue of torture. Everyone hated the CIA for a while. So there's tough jobs out there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with you, especially with the cop. Like even the people that rioted on January 6th, right? If you were just there to protest and you're screaming, even though it's totally misguided and disinformation that you ate up, that news companies parroted, blah blah blah. It's like the information was wrong. If you're there screaming, protesting, doing your thing, do it. It's America. Do it. It's fine.
First Amendment right. That's right. Yeah.
Like just like BLM.
I think they're right. I think you're a fucking idiot, but it's a First Amendment right, and I have no problem. And I had friends who were down there. I really did. I had friends who went down there, and when I heard about it, I said, "Just tell me you were not involved going near the Capitol." They said we weren't. I'm like, "All right, we're good." I think you're an idiot, but you're misguided. But you know what? You did. But those who actually went into the Capitol, I mean, that was, to me, that's insurrection. That was.
What are you doing? If they got to Mike Pence, they would have killed Mike Pence.
Yeah, totally. I have living in Washington is kind of interesting, because so I live next door to a former ambassador, and I have tons of friends in the media. I have friends in Congress all over the place, and so I had a congressman who was texting me from the floor during this happened. They thought they were done, and so it's just it was crazy. This was no joke.
Sheesh.
So yeah,
insane. Yeah, people want to brush that into the rug. It's crazy to me how people think, because if it was lefties, like real deal lefties coming in and fucking trying to crash the place and kill people, the right would have been ready for firing squads.
Look, if these were BLM protesters, it would have been different. And that's just it's sad, but I think it's really true. And Senator Ron Johnson, who I think is a complete lunatic,
oh my God,
showed his racism the other day by saying that. But that's just a fact of America. Now, look, that's not to say that the violent protests in Portland, for example, that was terrible. And so America is in a tough spot now. There's a lot of racial division, and I'm hoping that I don't think President Trump could have healed this. I'm hoping President Biden can. You got to remember, President Biden was really, has a lot of experience with kind of police reform, and so I think that there's a chance we'll get somewhere, but it's going to be hard, because we need well trained and well funded police forces, but the instances of kind of violence on African Americans perpetrated by some members of the police is awful.
Yeah,
and all I can say is, what I tell my Republican friends is, look, I have a whole bunch of African American friends, and I have these heart-to-heart conversations, and they say, like, they're worried about their kids going out at night, and there's nothing you can say to that. I'm sorry, there's just not.
Yeah.
And so I have friends whose I'm older now, whose kids are cops, African American police officers or FBI agents and stuff like that. And so it's, and they're really upset about what happened. And so, there's got to be a way forward where we can support our police forces and have a kind of a robust and well-functioning police, but respect our civil rights. And I would hope America gets heals and gets better. But boy, it's a tough spot now because you're either for Back the Blue or for BLM. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy. How you get one or the other, right?
My cop friends, they drive me crazy because I say I'm for BLM, and my African American friends, when I say I back the blue, they get pissed at me. So I'm literally for both, and I have to be that.
And the funny thing is, it's like, I just wish people took 2-3 minutes, use their fucking brain, and understand the nuances for both sides.
Yeah,
BLM, I understand why they're protesting. Whoever gets violent, breaks shit, gets arrested. That's the end of it.
Period. Right.
Well, it doesn't matter what side. The insurrectionist side, like the fake elections shit, all that's fed on just lies, on shit that didn't happen. And that's what's the craziest part about that. And even still, I think they should be able to protest peacefully, right?
Absolutely.
Not attack,
Yeah.
And so I don't understand why people can't understand that nuance and why it has to be one side or the other. Like, I don't understand that. Like, they can't reasonably get to that point, and it doesn't take a long time. It doesn't mean you need to be a fucking genius. Just think for 2 minutes, literally 120 seconds. Think about it, and then you get to it.
Right.
I don't know. We're fucked, Mark.
So unfortunately, I'll tell you one thing, that the saddest thing for me, and my doctors will get pissed, but so after I've had the TBI issue and kind of all the medical care I've gotten, and kind of this journey that I'm taking to healing is I'm not, they're like, really, you and I haven't had a sip of alcohol for a couple months. They're like, you can't drink anymore, because I would love to have this at all, period. It's just not a good idea. TBI victims should not, or people with that injury shouldn't drink. So, but I'll tell you one thing, after having this conversation, I'd like to have a scotch.
Sorry, bro. Sorry, man. I got you to that point.
Yeah, that's right. But the one thing I can do is, the one incredible development in Virginia is that medical marijuana is now legalized.
Nice.
And I'll tell you one thing, that's when it comes to kind of the veteran community or those who suffer from chronic pain, that's a really big development. And I'll tell you, if you take a look at the NFL, they're really progressive on this. And you'll see this kind of with the veteran community too, is that there's other things to do than have a beer or whiskey. You can take a gummy bear.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Mark, man, I appreciate this. I appreciate the time and everything. I appreciate your service and what you've done. Let's definitely keep in touch. Whenever you want to get on and rant, I'm in, man. Let's not.
Sure. So I'll come back. My book comes out in June, so I'll come back and talk some leadership stuff then. And it's always fun. I love to, I think back to my growing up in the tri-state area, and I always tell my kids that they're softer. They're soft growing up in Virginia. So we were much tougher in New Jersey. So.
So, like, one last thing. So there was a walk-in for Osama bin Laden, right?
No, there was not.
No, okay. All right. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it, man.
Take care. Have a great day. Thanks so much.
Bye.
See ya.